Welcome to bLU Talks.
Now I get to be on this side of the end. Thank you so much. This is so exciting to be here at Harvard. Yes, in every truth there is you. I'm going to tell you a true story. Imagine waking up one morning to be told on your 16th birthday, we are not your parents, we are actually your grandparents. Your mother died in childbirth and your father went off to America. He has since remarried and they have a family they've sent for you. We have all of your belongings packed. You're leaving on the next boat. You arrive at Ellis Island. They change your name from Bruchy Yankelowski to Rebecca Young. You arrive at your new home to find out they weren't looking for another family member. They were looking for a housekeeper and a maid. She went on to marry the first handsome man who came along. They had 3 children. He was a traveling salesman and left her alone to raise 3 children by herself. This is the story of my nanny Becky. So how would you look at the world after that? Could you trust again? Would you think that you might have abandonment issues after that? We are programmed from the time we are born throughout our childhood. So how did she see the world? She now had glasses on that she saw this lens through the world through, I can never trust again. I am abandoned. I will never be, who am I? No one cares about me. No one loves me. We are all programmed. We are all programmed by our parents, by our religion, by our culture, where we grew up, if there's issues around money, you name it, your traumas, all of those things color our lens of the world. People describe my nanny Becky as someone who is stoic. And the definition of stoic is a person who can endure pain and hardship without showing their feelings. So I think about the way that she went through life, just chugging along, doing the best she could, never truly dealing with her emotions. I think about how that wove through my life, being stoic and having that in my bones. As a little girl, I had undiagnosed learning disabilities. So in kindergarten, I started school and everyone could read. They were learning to write. They could do their math. I was lost. I developed this belief that I was stupid. I believed that I would never amount to anything. I never thought that I would have a purpose in life. And I started giving my power away to everyone and anything that I thought had, who knew more than I did. And I spent every single summer of my childhood at summer school, including college. My roommate is here, she can attest to that. One of my first jobs out of college was working in the Garment Center in New York City. And I remember sitting there in this cubicle. We had to get to work at 7 in the morning, couldn't leave until after 7 at night, and we weren't allowed to take a lunch. We had to sit there, and the company was so good, they paid for our lunches, so the lunches would come in. We would eat at our desk, and every couple of weeks, the CEO of the company would come in and take a bite of your sandwich and put it down. Walk to the next person, eat your French fries. Go to the next person and eat some of your salad. This went on a regular basis. He would go into each division on a regular basis and start eating your food. And we would wait for him to leave. We would get up out of our chairs, march over silently, throw out our lunches, and order again. What was it in me that I couldn't speak up? I sat there and let this happen over and over and over again because that was my programming. I had no voice. People are experts in what they don't want. How many times do we end up attracting things that we don't want? When we don't know who we are, when we don't know our values, then we get frustrated, we get depressed, we get anxious, we get fearful because we have no sense of self. We don't know who we are. So one of the first things I had to do was figure out my values. And how I did that was figuring out what they weren't. How many times do you end up with a group of friends and realize, I don't fit in here? You don't share their values. How many times do you end up in a situation at work where you're really uncomfortable? You don't share their values. So knowing what I didn't want helped me figure out what I did want. So over time, what happened was I had to figure out who I was and release those fears. At about 38 years old, I ended up having a nervous breakdown and I was suicidal. I didn't want to be here anymore. And I went from therapist to therapist to therapist. And no one was able to help me. And then finally someone suggested a hypnotist. And I was like, a hypno what? I'm like, don't they make you quack like a duck? What are they going to do for me? What I discovered was that they had the ability to just get to that original programming, that programming that I had from a young child that was deep inside of me that I couldn't access day to day. So they took me back to that time in my life and released those belief systems, released those negative beliefs that I could not access. And then we replaced it with what I wish I could have had instead. And suddenly, I changed the lens of how I saw the world. Now, values are like lighthouses. They are signals giving us direction, purpose, and meaning. When I worked at that company in New York City in the fashion industry, one of the things that happened was a shipment came in to the warehouse and someone accidentally accepted it, and there was something wrong with some of the goods that came in. So there was a blazer and a blouse, a pair of pants, and a skirt, and the skirt was supposed to be pleated. So this pleated skirt was not pleated. It was like someone had taken a ball and just scrunched it up. But the CEO of the company told us, ship it out anyway, and you make your people eat that and tell them there's nothing wrong with it. I would go to work sick, depressed, and for any of you who have ever commuted to New York City, even if you live in New York City, it takes an hour. So this was more than 12, 14, 16-hour days for me working this kind of hours. I finally just said, enough. I finally had to discover, I knew what I didn't want, then I had to figure out what I did want. This is a fascinating statistic. The Gallup did a poll and said that only 32% of employees are actually engaged, which means 68% are not engaged at work. But when they found their why and their purpose and matched the values with the companies that they work for, they now were engaged at 73%. Incredible statistic. So a number of years ago, I was doing a marketing workshop with someone and they said, who here wants to discover your why? I said, that would be amazing. I would love to find out what my why is. She said, just take a test and you'll discover your why. I took this test. It changed my life. It was so amazing to me that I decided to get certified as a why coach, helping other people discover their why. Now, those of you who are familiar with Simon Sinek, and he did this amazing, famous TED Talk about discovering the importance of discovering your why. What happened was a fellow named Gary Sanchez saw him speak, went up to him and said, "Simon, I want to know what my why is." He said, "I don't help people discover their why. I tell them why it's important." So Gary went on over the course of 10 years to interview thousands of people and discovered that there's actually 9 whys. And I will tell you, after watching all of these speakers at bLU Talks, I would sit there and listen and say, I think I know what their why is. And you can hear it in people's language when they speak. So the first one is contribute. And these are the people who like to be team players. They're behind the scenes and they support people. And they always love to be of service. Their challenge is that how many times do they raise their hand and volunteer? They get really overwhelmed. And they will volunteer for things that they're not even really good at, and then they get resentful. The next one is trust. These are the people who you can do a business deal with a handshake. These are people who bend over backwards to make sure that they are trustworthy. And they will make sure that, and they will do everything to trust you as well. Their challenges is they see the world through trust. If they have an inkling that you might betray them, you ever have people ghost you? Just disappear? You don't get a second chance? That person probably has trust as their why. The next one is make sense. These are people who have the ability to make sense out of complicated situations and problems. They are amazing about problem solving. The thing is, they're so good at problem solving, they can be a bottleneck at a company because everyone goes to them to solve their problems instead of learning to solve the problem themselves. Next is better way. We have a lot of entrepreneurs here. These people are the visionaries. They're the entrepreneurs. They're the ones who come up with new solutions. And they're always looking for a better way. So what happens with better way people? It's hard for them to stop thinking about better ways. You ever buy a computer or a new car and you leave the store or the auto dealership and all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's obsolete now because a better one's about to come out. So better way people are amazing idea people. The next one is right way. Now these are people who are all about structure. You need these people because they make sure that whatever the idea people have get done. They create structure and they want things that are repeatable. Next we have challenge. I am a challenge. These are the people who think outside the box. Over the course of 2 days, how many speakers were talking about out of the box, out of the box? We are also entrepreneurs. We are always looking for something different, not necessarily better, it just has to be different. Hence the color of my hair, I live in a log home. I always strive to be different. If anyone ever called me normal, I would get very insulted. And I will say, no one has ever called me that. The problem with challenge people or the challenge is we can be misunderstood. We can be judged. We can get bullied. Next is mastery. These are the amazing people who have the ability to master everything. Everything they take on, they do full tilt and they do deep dives in everything. They're the smallest percentage of the population and they're really remarkable people to be around. Their challenge is that they will make a Rolls Royce out of everything when all you really need is a Volkswagen. And there's nothing wrong with the Volkswagen. I'm still waiting for my convertible. Next is clarify. These are people who ask a lot of questions. It's really important for them to make sure that everyone understands what's going on and that other people are understood. Their challenge is they ask a lot of questions. They talk a lot. And so it's almost a compulsion for them. So it's very important to let them know that you understand what they're saying. I remember being in the post office and we had 8 people in line, and there was a woman in front of me talking to the postwoman. She was asking a million questions, and then came the final one. What's your name? Kathy. Kathy with a C or Kathy with a K? I went, oh my God, we're never going to get out of here. The next one is simplify. And these are the people who make everyone's life easier. They are the organizers in the world. They simplify people's lives. They are the ones who can take a 5-paragraph email and respond in 4 bullet points. Their challenge is they do not do well in chaos. So if they're in a company or an environment that's very chaotic, they will shut down. So according to the Y Institute, we do something called the Y operating system. So you have a why, a how, and a what. So your why comes from your limbic system. It comes from the part of the brain that is emotionally driven. So when you do things from your why, when you speak from your why, when your branding comes from your why, then it's compelling. People want to buy from you because it's an emotional decision. How many times have you gone in and sat in a brand new car at a car dealership and upgraded and spent the next level up or 2 because suddenly it became emotional, or walked by a store and bought a dress that you couldn't afford and didn't really need, but it became an emotional purchase. So when you are living in your why, everything is easy and effortless. You have incredible amount of energy for what you are doing. And so when you know the why of your employees, you can place them in places where they have energy. They can't wait to come to work. They love what they do. And how many times do you take someone who's in sales, who's probably a challenge, or a better way, promote them, and suddenly they're a manager? You take them out of their why and you promote them into mediocrity. So understanding people's why, you can retain them better. You know what they're good for. You have someone who's a contribute, who's raising their hand for everything, whereas the real person should be right way. So our why operating system is, your why is why you do what you do. Your how is how you do it. And your what is what you ultimately bring and what other people can count on you for. So my why is, I believe that success happens when we think outside the box and challenge the status quo. How I do that is find a better way and share it. And what I ultimately bring are solutions that make sense. So what does this have an impact on? If you think about it, if you have now done your work and you've released your negative belief systems and you can be present, there's no more competition. There's enough for everyone. So when you're at work, you can have now collaboration instead of competition. You can have alignment within your company and your teams and the people you work with. There's now, to look for the values of the company that you're choosing, or the values of your own company, and make sure that you hire people who are aligned with your values. That will give you longer retention, less stress. Disease is 70% is stress, comes from stress. When you reduce the stress, you're going to have people with less sick days and more efficiency, happier home life, better relationships, and you get to leverage your truth. So I think about my nanny Becky and her stoicism and how she forged through life. And now I think about a number of years ago where I felt worthless and didn't feel like I had a purpose. And now I'm standing here. I have a best-selling book. I'm speaking around the country, and I have a thriving coaching practice. And it is possible by changing your mind. Because always remember, your truth is in you. Thank you so much. I have some tools here for people. And there's some videos that you can take a look at, and here's some contact information.
Great job, Lisa.
Thank you.